And then we moved on. Luckily, we wanted to, we were using that in conjunction with Kaltura. And eventually, we wanted to get a better handle on how accessible were our courses. So we did a larger audit in the fall of 2015, and we identified our biggest issues, which were all the big things, right? The big five: video and audio, no captions or transcripts, or rarely, links not formatted correctly, document accessibility. That was probably the biggest one. So we moved on, we set our goals for what we wanted to implement, starting with video, because that seemed like the easiest. And also looking at a document accessibility pilot. And then we had to monitor, and we'll get more into this, the reporting the cost, and then process about improvement. And during this time, we did another audit in 2017, and we also began implementing Ally, which for those of you who don't know, it's plug into Blackboard, and it allows for basically a scan of the course, and it updates the document, so if they have a scanned in PDF that is not like OCR, it will fix it. So it's awesome and saves a lot of headaches, or we think it's going to be awesome. So we're testing that, or we're implementing that right now. So here's, I'm not going to read it all, but this is sort of my checklist of things you need to think about when you're sort of starting this. I didn't do that. But, you know, identifying your stakeholders, obviously, thinking about, you know, you got to identify which vendors, you got to test them, you got to you got to implement, you got to communicate, training, documentation, you got to make sure you have it all. You got to think about monitoring and reporting, like what do you need, who's going to ask for it, what are they going to want, you know? And then for us, we had to think about faculty reminders. How could we handle it, both in the initial stages of the rollout at implementing captioning, so it was very new. How do we keep reminding them? How do we sort of help them be good? And then how can we incorporate that into our regular processes within particularly within the College of Professional Studies, we have a readiness check, right? Hey, you're ready for the term. You're doing a little more work to be ready for the term, and we could incorporate that in there, as well as making sure that we're checking for accessibility within other quality processes. And then, somebody can talk more about this, but we also have to think about the cost, and like, we reached two different thresholds there where we had to sort of switch to the unlimited amount of video, right, during this process. So that was something that, you know, I hadn't thought of at the start, but it was a good problem to have because that meant we had more people using it. I kind of thought this matrix might be a little bit more helpful for a lot of you that are thinking about captioning and looking at vendors. I just want to say this is my our view of the world. We were working with Caption Sync when we first started this, and I believe that's the vendor that they're using with Tegrity in the desktop capture in the classroom, which we have been working with Kaltura to try and get a different system set up. I found Caption Sync fine as a vendor, but in our course development process, it was unwieldy for us. So our editors and our multimedia people had to keep checking things. You know, maybe it was because we were doing a lot of engineering courses at the time, but they were getting a lot of the terminology wrong. So we also did a pilot with 3Play, which as a vendor, I say I loved, except for the cost. I mean, they're very accurate. I really like how all their integrations work personally with Blackboard, or the way that we can grant access to people that we don't want to give any kind of administrative access to within our systems. We can give them a special account, and they can go in and find their stuff in Kaltura and capture it like one-off. So that's great for potentially certain groups that don't normally create stuff but might, or as we were piloting with some of this stuff, it was good when we just launched our integration with Kaltura. It was great because we could give it to the marketing group who wasn't sure if they were going to be using our resources or we could give it to, and we specifically did it for a test with the Disability Resource Center to try out. How about if we do this instead of getting a cart provider every time, because then we have the captions, whereas after the cart provider we don't have those, that only goes to the student. So we thought this would be a cheaper and faster solution, which it did prove to be that. I don't know if they were paid their bill to us, but that's okay. And then when we were implementing with Kaltura and wanting to really, in the reach captioning, we really wanted to backfill and upload, make sure we had as much of our stuff captioned as possible. So we actually did a solution with Rev, which as a vendor is, I mean, they're cheap, they're fast, they're accurate. The problems comes with the nuances, which, you know, depending on what your needs are, they can be perfect, but you know, it's $1 a minute, that's great. However, what if you wanted to go faster than 24-hour turnaround? You can't stop it midstream. You can't have separate budget lines where I can't have a account for the library, and account for my group, account for whatever. So the complexity of the tool is not what a lot of larger implementations might need, but it's great for just dumping a whole bunch of stuff for captioning in there. And you can see all the comments over here. And then Sealage 4, sorry, I put it at the bottom, it's a little hard to see, but we worked with Sonia, and it's a lower cost than say 3Play, and it's just as accurate, but it's not quite as cheap as Rev. But with that, we do get the opportunity for more integration options, and we'll talk more about what we haven't done that we'd like to do, but we get a lot more opportunities here, and we have the interactive transcript, which is great, depending. The bad side of it is we found that unfortunately with our integration, I don't know if now it's going to SAS and then Ultra if that will change, but unfortunately it's hard to use in Blackboard the way we'd like to use it because of the Blackboard player or the Blackboard frame that the Kaltura player that supports the interactive transcript goes in when you're in Blackboard. So hopefully all these updates will pass it. We did not have a lot of luck with the mechanical captioning and the casual language options. That was not great for us, and my general recommendation would be don't bother with the mechanical captioning, because the reality is to meet legal requirements you need to be at 99.5% accuracy. So we found it added a lot of extra tags to our media, which we were also trying to think about how to catalog our media. We haven't really successfully done that, but we wanted to have tags that mattered, not a whole bunch of tags that just said project, project, project. So we added extra stuff that we didn't like. The other thing just to note about, the formats. I mean, generally these things do support a lot of different formats, but we have run into things that aren't easily supported by either, like 3Play. This is a quick chart and some stats of generally since we've implemented, not the early stuff, but total since January 16, we've had a lot of videos created by faculty, staff, and students. You can see about a third of those are faculty and staff. So that could be people in my group, it could be people in the marketing group, but mostly it's faculty. But what we see is about half of them get added to of course in Blackboard. So that means some of those could be rough cuts from our media team or our marketing team, but some of them could just be the instructor going, hello, my name is Jim. Oh, wrong one, start over, And then we find that in Blackboard and Caption, 23%. So the great thing about what Kaltura and Celio 24 allowed us to do is to have this one button captioning, right? You create the video, click, yes, I want captions. But maybe because we had scarred all our faculty from the other process, they didn't believe it, they don't see it, or maybe they create their videos and then add them later, so they don't remember that they didn't caption it, or they created it 3 terms ago and they copied that one forward and they don't remember that it doesn't have captions. But the fact that this much was being created and not going into Blackboard for me was a prohibitive cost. I'm like, I don't want to turn on just all captioning, which we could have done. We had money in the budget, we found out afterwards, but so we had talked about ways to address that. And one of the things that I've been trying to work on is some of the API scripts, but this is my biggest takeaway to all of you. If you do this and you think you're going to need customization, make sure that it's on the books and a priority for your people resources, or be prepared to pay your vendor to do that customization for you. Because while we love Kaltura and working with them, they're a great vendor, we don't really want to pay them all that money because we have somebody that can do it, we just need her time. So that has been one of our 2020 hindsights. So prepare for those people costs, prepare even just getting to get the right reports that we needed. That took person time that can do all that stuff that I don't know, with the APIs and stuff like that to get the right reports, which we're still perfecting, but we're not in any kind of time where I can just press a button and get the report and say to somebody, hey, look, our costs are going up, our costs are going down, wait a second, what's going on here? It takes a little bit. You know, the other thing is, yeah, I already talked about mechanical captioning. We've had difficulty estimating annual cost because I keep on basing it on the best possible scenario. But I would say that we probably are seeing a little bit of an increase every year. I forget what Sonia says is the normal thing, but maybe about 5 to 10%, you know. And then I'd say that the scripting, you know, that was the big thing for us. So I guess those are my big takeaways. Are we stopping for questions in between these, or are we going right on to the next thing?
I think we'll have like maybe
Oh,
one
I did
question.
have this. Oh, this is my last bit was, so one of the things we have worked with CLO 24, one of the things we said is, well, why can't we go the other way? Why can't a student record something in sign language and be able to have captions? And like, why is that such a big deal? Why? So CLO 24 has found us a vendor because unfortunately working with the DRC in our university, you know, they're great, but they're not always on the same time frame that we need to be, because we need to find somebody, get them to watch the thing, I guess say the words out loud, then we take that recording and then caption it, whereas if we had some vendor that was capable of doing that quickly in a similar turnaround time, those students could participate in presentations or whatever online the same way all our other students would. So we haven't done that yet. We were going to do it the other term, and then the student decided to do something else. The CLO 24 portal, I still think it could be so much better. They could spend a lot of time and make everybody a lot happier there. And then one of the things that 3Play supposedly does that I don't really know, but I do think there's enough opportunity to investigate more the idea of an overlay that goes over a third-party video where there's not captions provided, or there's, you know, poor captions provided, where we don't have to ingest the video and put it in our system and then deal with all that. We could just say, here's the URL, give us a caption overlay and something that we can put in a course. So
maybe one brief question while we get the next slides up.
Any questions, comments, concerns? No? All right.
Can you share these slides with us?
Yeah, they're going to share them afterwards, yeah.
So when you say videos, I would suspect that online videos include both things that faculty created as well as commercial videos.
Yeah, it's a mix. So the videos in the courses, when we did our audit, is it something that's instructor created? That was our biggest problem, right? Because we don't have tons of control over what people put on the web and don't caption, but the third-party overlay would be nice.
Yeah.
But it is also putting the emphasis on the instructor to identify that and request whatever that is. The other thing is, you know, a lot of people will link out to TED Talks or whatever, and usually those are fine, but every once in a while there's something that they find that they're linking out to that isn't captioned. But usually this is mostly centered around videos that faculty are creating and loading up themselves.
And is it hard to get faculty to do this a semester in advance? Or a lot of people want
Oh, yeah, well, our turnaround time is generally what we put in our courses, which is probably not exactly right, but this is one of the things that we've been talking about potentially when we expand our contract or change our contract, now that we've got merged blackboards. We need to have some conversations, but right now the two speeds that we have like externally, so for anybody posting in Blackboard, is either 7-day turnaround, because there are some faculty that prepare in advance, I'm told, and then 48-hour, because we figured anything that was going faster than that was probably getting handled by one of our team that works with the Disability Resource Center, and then she's pushing it through at 6-hour turnaround usually. Or anyone on our team, or not anyone, but certain people on our team can speed it up. So if somebody did say, oh, I forgot, you know, the class starts tomorrow, could you expedite it? We can expedite those captions, which is great. But mostly we find that people are not clicking the button. Unfortunately, we've hovered at this. We did have a peak at one point where we did go up to like 40%, but that was because Jen and I were backfilling. We were like, oh, look at all these videos that didn't caption, and we went through and manually set the tags to caption them. So, yeah, in 6 months in advance, yeah, I think that doesn't happen unless we're doing it for them, like it's a project we're working on together.
Okay, we should probably, sorry, we only really have time for, we're going to do more questions at the end, hopefully. So next up is Video Captioning, Establishing High Standards with Limited Resources by Shirley Cho, Academic Resources and Operations Specialist in the Center for Teaching Excellence here at Boston College.
Thanks. So I'm going to try and go through my slides pretty quickly. So I work here at the CTE. The Center for Teaching Excellence mission and goal is to work with faculty on teaching methods and to improve those teaching methods. We are also the managers of the LMS and the lecture capture system here at the university, so we use Canvas and Anapto. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about a pilot that we completed a couple of years ago where we examined the cost and the ability to caption in-house. So we talked earlier about the legal aspects, but a few years ago, around 2015, a number of schools were settling with the Department of Justice and Department of Education due to inaccessible platforms. And what really caught our attention at the CTE was Harvard and MIT's lawsuits against edX and MOOCs. Around this time, our offices were beginning to develop online courses as well. So in that summer and fall, we decided to do some research and put together a working group to analyze caption tools, vendors, and examine video content. And the goal was to really learn about things that we didn't already know and to see how best to provide support for faculty on campus to caption their videos. So the pilot ran for just a semester. Prior to the pilot, as I mentioned, we did some research. There was no funding for the pilot. We used existing undergraduate students at the center to do the captions. Also, a graduate student was recruited and myself. Basically, the goal was to prove that captioning in-house was cost prohibitive and to provide that information to the provost office and IT to get people think about funding. So we spent the fall training undergraduate students, coming up with best practices guides, and sort of determining that we wanted to caption all of our public-facing CTE videos. Around that same time, a Lynch School of Education faculty member approached our offices in regards to captioning. He teaches Universal Design for Learning to K-12 teachers in the School of Ed, and it was really important to him to caption all of his video content. He had previously recruited family and friends to do them in his captioning, and it didn't go so well, so he's outsourcing that job. So this is a quick snapshot of 3 parts of the captioning key that we put together in our office. It's about 2 pages long. It's based on the best practices and full guide from the Described and Captioned Media program, which is available on their website. That's several pages long. So the undergraduate students were basically given this guide, given some opportunity to read it over, learn, do a practice caption video, and then use the guide as they were continuing to caption. This graduate student, as well as myself, were also available throughout the whole process to help answer some of the more complicated questions. So, in our research, we determined YouTube was the best platform to caption videos. YouTube is free. We also already had all of our public-facing videos on YouTube. There were also permissions concerns. We were less concerned about giving undergraduate students access to YouTube videos to caption versus Anapto videos, which also has a captioning tool. At the time, it wasn't as far advanced as YouTube, but giving permissions to undergrad students to edit or delete faculty videos was not high on our priority list. So we used YouTube. There were pros and cons with it. As already stated, auto-generated captions weren't great, but it did help guide some of the students in captioning their own content. So they could either edit the auto-generated captions, create their own captions, or use the transcribe feature in YouTube to put in all of the captions and then allow YouTube to time it on their own. So we use Google Sheets to track the amount of time it took for the students to do the video. The longer the video, the longer it took, and the far less interested they were to so we found that if QA1 was failed, either the students were asked to do it again, and or it was reassigned to a student, And then QA1 was done by a graduate student, QA2 was done by me. We found that both QAs were necessary for this because there weren't a lot of standards for captioning. We wanted to provide the best quality captions available, and some of the content was just not familiar to the students. So this got cut off a little bit, but the pilot findings here, it shows that for 1 minute of video, it costs our office $10.47 to caption that video. This is just based on the Lynch School of Education faculty members' videos, which are about 115 minutes. To put that into context, if we had sent it to a third-party vendor for $3 a minute, it would have cost us $345. So we only showed the School of Ed faculty's videos because his videos were shorter and because there was a time limit for them. We tried to get them captioned as quickly as possible to give it back to him in order to upload to his pages. So some of our other major takeaways were that, as I mentioned, there weren't already existing guidelines and standards for captioning, so it was really up to us to decide what that might look like. There were lots of consistency issues, quality issues, and interests varied. I have one undergraduate student who really enjoyed captioning, but all in all, it wasn't everyone's favorite task to do. It also wasn't the only thing that the students were doing, so this was something that was a project that they were working on in addition to normal tasks. So we weren't able to devote 100% of time to get these captions done and back, or on the videos as quickly as possible. The end, we identified 3Play Media as our vendor. It has an easy integration into Panopto, our current system, and we've shared this information with various other offices on campus. So where are we now? Our center continues to work closely with the Connors Family Learning Center and the Disability Services Office here at the university to identify accessible needs for students. And we try to work closely with faculty to make sure that their Canvas pages and content are accessible. We also work with the Academic Technology Advisory Board here at BC, who funded a $10,000 grant to help caption faculty produced videos. So we work both with faculty and with ATAB to get those content captioned. We continue to run workshops on accessibility in UDL. We have shared this content with various members of the university, and as I've said, I think it shows it's pretty cost prohibitive to caption in-house, at least at the CTE. We've also adopted UDoIt, which is a Canvas learning technology integration, and it scans Canvas pages for accessibility concerns. So it will see if a video is up, it's not captioned. It will also look for color contrast issues, alt texts that are missing. And it's a new LTI that we're trying to get more faculty to be involved in or to be interested in. And currently, the university is in the midst of negotiating costs for funding for other departments to capture their video content.
Thank you. So same thing, one question maybe while we get set up for next year.
So you said that, you compared costs between having your students do it with the 2 PA checks and then sending it out. The accuracy level is good, and you said you were trying to do a fast turnaround. Is your turnaround with the vendor as quick?
Absolutely not. Like I said, the students worked at it in addition to normal tasks, and an average student works about 7-8 hours a week. We try to curb the consistency issue and quality issue by having the same student caption the entire video, because there were little idiosyncrasies that each student had with it. And then that was also the reason why we wanted QA1 and QA2, so that a grad student could take it over. A lot of her job was just timing the content and making sure that the captions were on the screen when they were being said. And my responsibility was making sure everything was a quality caption video.
Okay, great. Our next speaker is going to be talking about stumbling towards perfection using YouTube to caption library-produced videos. And this is Jeremy Smith from, he's the digital project manager at UMass Amherst.
Thank you. So Gabe asked me to talk about, we're dealing with a lot, much lower hanging fruit These are library-produced videos. Well, I should back up. We originally did a sort of inventory of all the media we were producing in the library, and I think you were part of this, Gabe, right? So we had a YouTube page which had a few hundred videos on it. Special collections and university archives have a digital repository where they upload original digitized content. And those are sort of the two areas that I had a hand in. So I'm in the special collection, I was in special collections, but I moved over to scholarly communication, and I work on open educational resources, which is tangentially related to some of this work. But I have a background in video, so my nickname's Old Man Media, so anytime like video stuff comes up, I'm involved in some way. And I still produce some of these videos for the library. So we had a bunch of videos on here, and we have fortunate enough to have Kelsey Hall, who's our assistive technologies person. She's in the library. They're physically in the library. They're part of academic computing. And she was able to kind of guide us through this process. So she said, she looked at everything that the library was producing in whatever form and said, here's what you can do, here are your options, and sort of helped us guide. So what we decided to do, she's been doing DIY captioning workshops for anyone who wants to do them. So we, some staff, myself, some other folks in the library can go to those, and she also teaches undergrad. So in the scholarly communication office, we have students doing various work related to scholarly communication, but we had this sort of backlog of, 150 or so videos on YouTube. And this was pretty much, it's promotional, it's short little 2-minute things, not a big deal. But some of them were lectures that we would film, that were more like 90 minutes or so, or micro documentaries that have been made over the years on various aspects of the library. So it was a hodgepodge of things. And we had those DIY workshops. The students took them, I took them, so I could sort of see what it was. And so Kelsey was very good about kind of educating the students about how to caption. And it was, it's like a 2-hour workshop or so it wasn't in-depth, but I think it gave the students enough. And so we have been using YouTube, and there's people have said a lot of the pros and cons I think you all know about. I think the automatic captioning has improved because when I first got into this, I said, oh yeah, we don't even bother with YouTube, it's so awful. But it's actually a lot better than it used to be. And other than names and cities and towns and things that you would expect, if it's clearly recorded and clearly spoken, which isn't always the case, it does a fairly decent job of getting a baseline. It has to go through, every caption has to be looked at and edited, of course, and that's what the students are doing. But they found that was fairly sufficient. So let YouTube do its thing, I'll go through and look at it, capitalize, periods, put in any kind of notations that need to be used. So this is just a look so you can sort of see some of the stuff that we have. We're all about falcons now because we have a falcon nest on top of the library, so there's a lot of stuff about that. But the Development and Communication Office does a lot of short little videos, and they're just doing the closed captions for those on their own. They're short, they're easy to do. But we have, once you get into this, there's lots of, this was a lecture that was recently done, this Du Bois lecture, which I haven't worked on yet. But we also did, and these are actually our most popular videos, these here, some of these developmental biology films. I think they were, Lynn Margulis, who's a biologist who taught at UMass for a while, who died a few years ago, has several disciples who are kind of carrying on some of her legacy. And one of the things was, these were, I think, Laura, was it NIH funded originally, these films?
NSF, actually.
NSF, yeah, that's right. So these were NSF, National Science Foundation funded films from the 60s and 70s. And she had them digitized, and she wanted them to be publicly accessible. So she sort of came to the library and said, would you host them? And I said, okay, well, maybe we'll put in we could have an institutional repository where we sort of store the archive versions, but make them publicly accessible, because that's what she would have wanted. So they were digitized, we put them up, and they're all now captioned. And these were fairly easy to do because a lot of it, there wasn't a lot of voiceover in it, but there was some. And these are actually, oddly, or maybe not oddly, our most popular videos. Some of these have thousands and thousands of hits, whereas some of the others are more in the hundreds. And there's lots of comments, and I think these are being used in high schools and students just Googling things about various things. Because it was microscopic photography. They're really well done. And there's dozens and dozens of them on various biological processes. So this is kind of a cool piece of our content on the page. And so yeah, like I said, since late 2017, I'd say, between the combination of myself, the students, the Development and Communication Office, there's I think about 250 videos that we've sort of dealt with, the backlog. There's a few outliers, most of the longer ones, I think the students have been avoiding doing those. But so the good thing is, the pros of this approach that we're using is that it's fairly easy for the undergrads using YouTube. It's pretty intuitive, the automatic caption, like I said, is better. One of the cons is, there's a lack of style functions, so bold and italic, you can't do that in YouTube yet. That might change. You can't do video description, which was mentioned earlier, and I think YouTube knows about this, because you would need a second audio track, which is something that YouTube currently doesn't have the capability to do. So if we want to get into video description, that would be an area that I would guess YouTube will eventually have the capability for. And then I did use Cadet, which you'll be hearing about later, which was good and had all those style functions. But what I had done was I downloaded a version from YouTube to try and add in some of those things. And there was an issue with the time codes overlapping, so when someone was talking and there were no breaks, the captions would be right up next to each other, and for some reason in Cadet, the time codes were overlapping. There was just an issue that I had to create a frame break between the captions in Cadet. So that was, if you're kind of using one for the other, there might be that issue. And the other thing we're doing besides this is special collections in university archives. They're using we have a repository for that called Credo. And within Credo, there's several videos that have been digitized, and they use Able Player, which is an accessible video player that they just transitioned over to. So that's what this thing is. And they're essentially kind of doing this hack where they use YouTube, their content's already digitized, upload it to YouTube, use the automatic captioning tool, make some edits, download it, and then upload the web VTT file, which is, you can do multiple outputs on YouTube, that's one of them, and then just upload that with Able Player. So web VTT is HTML5 compatible, so it's really useful. I think so, yeah, this is, and it generates a transcription, so now this is almost brand new and they're still kind of experimenting.